Hi all and welcome to a special show of the Truth, Honour and Integrity. And tonight's guest is Kevin Annett of the ITCCS. Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. Tonight's show will be with Kevin Annett of ITCCS, and we look forward to hearing from him shortly. Slight introduction. Who is Kevin Annett? Well, Kevin's is the head of the organisation of ITCCS, the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State, that has been operating since 2010 with the prime objective to bring public knowledge to the heinous crimes committed against children and First Nation families, which involves high-profile people like the UK royals, popes and many others. Kevin was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, renominated in fact, in 2015, and Kevin has 5 books out called The Unrelenting, Between Sodom and Zion. Number 2, Murder by Decree, The Crimes of Genocide in Canada. The 3rd book, Truth Seller's Shield, A Manual for Whistleblowers. 1497 and so on, A History of White People in Canada. And the final book, The Establishing of the Reign of National Liberty, A Common Law Training Manual. Hi Kevin, how are you, sir? So, I remember a number of years ago we had you on with Cosmic Voice when I was the host there, and with Drake. And for those, we have a lot of new members. We still have the bulk of the Cosmic Voice listeners, but we also have a lot of new members. And what was the starting point for you to get involved in what you're doing, and what drives you to take on the system?
Be imprisoned under the law, and over half these children died. They never came back. And I began to meet the survivors of this genocide, and they told me their stories. I began to document it. It cost me my job. The church fired me because the United Church that I worked for had been one of the churches, along with the Catholics and the Anglicans, that had run these places. And they, of course, didn't want this to come out. They still don't want it to come out. I began to document it over the years, work with people. We started a real grassroots movement across Canada that eventually, after about 15 years, forced the government to acknowledge that thousands of children had died in these places, and that, in fact, yes, the policy was genocide. Of course, nobody ever went to jail over it. Nobody went to trial. Any of us who brought this stuff out were severely attacked, still are. And so we realized we had to go outside Canada to build up support, and to also go after the source of what the crime was. It was coming from London. It was coming from Rome over many centuries. This has happened to many people all over the world. And that's why in 2010 we formed the International Tribunal of Crimes of Church and State. We're now operating in 9 countries. We brought criminal charges against the Pope. We helped force Pope Benedict down. The evidence we brought out in a common law trial was one of the things that compelled him to step down in 2013. And we're doing ongoing investigations and trials about the child trafficking, the murder, these other crimes that are still very much ongoing. So people can read a lot of that background at itccs.org, murderbydecree.com. And, nutshell background introduction.
Right. Good. That's good stuff. So for those who don't know, Kevin, who and what is the Ninth Circle Satanic Cult?
Well, that's something that we encountered about 3 years ago in the course of our investigations in Europe. Several women came forward in Holland who had been raised as part of this Ninth Circle Satanic Cult. Now, satanic cults operate all over the place. On our Radio Free Canada program on Sundays, we have interviewed a number of people who were raised in these satanic cults. But the thing about these two women in Holland is that they identified a very high-level cult operating. The Ninth Circle takes its name from the book Dante's Inferno, where he describes the different levels of hell. And the ninth level, the lowest circle of hell, is where Satan resides. These are high-level Satanists. They operate with a lot of protection from the Catholic Church. In fact, according to documents we found and these eyewitnesses, every pope, every top cardinal is expected to take part in these rituals, which involve the ritual torture and killing of children, the drinking of their blood, all of these usual satanic rituals. We've had eyewitnesses describe how this carries on. Again, their testimonies, Anne-Marie van Bienberg and Tos Nienhaus, their statements are up online at itccs.org. They operate with a lot of protection, and yet just last month on April 30th, we were able to disrupt a number of these ceremonies in Europe because we're getting more help from the police. There's more stuff in the news now about this, and more police are beginning to willing to take this on. So it's kind of hard for ordinary people to accept this at first because it's so outside their experience, but it's documented. We have the eyewitnesses. We know the mass grave sites. We've even excavated a few of them in Canada, and definitely this stuff is very real.
Yes, you mentioned the Pope. Of course, Pope Francis recently, as of last week, I think it was, absolved over 2,000 priests who have raped or killed children, including a serial criminal with HIV who deliberately infected young infants. Now, many of these priests had already been convicted, as per your website, and served prison time. But what is your stance on Pope Francis absolving all these priests, and what can ITCCS do to change this?
Well, the reason he's doing that is because their backs are to the wall. Jorge Bergoglio, so-called Pope Francis, was brought in to do a lot of damage control for the Vatican after Ratzinger was forced out. Ratzinger was still hiding out in the Vatican to avoid arrest, but Bergoglio came in to try to make it look like the Vatican was reforming itself. He made a lot of noise about them having a zero-tolerance policy, but then he turns around and actually says to the priests that they are not to tell police when children are raped. They're supposed to keep it in-house. And he's showing his true colors now because we have discovered that over 10% of those priests were actually from Canada, and a lot of them from Quebec, who are personally involved in this Ninth Circle network. It's especially strong in Canada, for various reasons. But so Bergoglio is just really doing what he's done for a long time. When he was Archbishop in Argentina during the Dirty Wars in the 1980s, he worked hand in glove with the military junta there, trafficking children of political prisoners, making his own priests disappear. So he's got a lot of blood on his hands personally. This stuff is not surprising when you look into his background.
Yes, I agree. One of the most high-profile cases that some of our listeners will be aware, because I've mentioned it on our show a number of times. But for those who are not aware and are listening tonight, how much detail do you know about the incidents involving Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth in Kamloops residential school, where they took 10 children for an alleged picnic and none of those kids returned? And are you able to elaborate on that episode and also what happened to William Coombs, who was a witness to those events?
Well, this is very personal for me because I knew William very well. He worked with our network in Canada, on the west coast of Vancouver. He was one of 6 of our native members who were killed. William died from lethal injection at St. Paul's Catholic Hospital very soon after he went public about these crimes. His testimony and that of his friend Jesse Jules, who was another witness to this, but he also died, was that Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip showed up at the Kamloops school in 1964 in October. Now, we checked the records, and in fact, there was a royal visit to Canada that month in October 1964, so they were in the country. William said that they showed up, and he remembers the day she showed up because they were all fed that day, which was kind of unusual. They'd given good food, good clothes for once. They went down to this picnic. They were given, some of them were given this like Kool-Aid to drink, and they passed out. But afterwards, he was told by one of the children that 10 of the children had been taken away by the Queen and the Prince Philip and were never seen again. They were all local boys and girls, 7 boys and 3 girls, native children, taken away, never seen again at all. And like I say, William died very quickly after he talked about this. He was scheduled to come to London. I was working then when this happened in 2011. I was setting up a forum in London where he was going to give this testimony. And not only did he die when I was away arranging this, but I was then deported from the country, from Stansted Immigration Airport. When I tried coming back in, no reason given, I was just deported and fingerprinted, photographed the whole bit. So clearly that we were onto something. We had hit a nerve involving the criminal liability of Elizabeth Windsor and Philip Windsor directly. Not simply as heads of state, which they're guilty of under international laws. They're guilty of perpetrating genocide and covering it up, but also personally implicated. And don't forget, even under Crown law, a monarch can be tried for a felony. So she is liable for arrest and imprisonment at any time because of this verdict.
As I understood it, there is video evidence, photographic evidence, and recorded evidence that they were there that day. Is it not the case that they signed out those 10 children, and there is recorded evidence of that?
We have, it wasn't so much signing out, because of course they wouldn't put that on the official records, but there is 2 things. There's a record of the absence of those 10 children on the records of the Kamloops Catholic Indian Residential School. We have checked the records, and there were, as William said, that month, 10 children went missing off the official school records. The other thing is we brought in a police-accredited psychic who had helped the police find bodies of people who had gone missing. And this woman, I went with her to Dead Man's Creek, which is the place the children disappeared. She pointed out exactly where they had disappeared. She said they were killed the same day. They were buried in a cultic configuration. And don't forget the dates, October 10th, 1964. It's the 10th day of the 10th month, 1964, all add up to 10 children. It clearly had cultic significance, their killing.
Yes, they like the numbers game. Of course, we had the incident in Manchester, the UK, which is the 22nd, and there's 6 other incidents, recent incidents that have all taken place on the 22nd. So it's becoming more and more familiar to the public now that they use these certain days and certain numerology to implement their satanic crimes, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now, given there's a lot of judges, certain authorities, social services, and the police all heavily involved in these practices and crimes, has ITCCS been able to make any progress with these groups, and if so, in what way?
Well, first of all, the common law courts that you convened, there were 2 of them in 2013 and 2014 in Brussels. It established through the verdicts that these heads of church and state were guilty on 2 counts of an indictment of committing crimes against humanity and then concealing it, entering into a criminal conspiracy to conceal all of this. Now, first of all, that verdict can be enforced by any court in the world. Any court can issue arrest warrants based on that warrant. And as a matter of fact, or rather that verdict, that's one of the reasons that Pope Benedict resigned, because the Spanish government was in the process of doing that. They had issued a diplomatic note 6 days before Benedict resigned, telling the Vatican that they were considering issuing an arrest warrant if he ever appeared on Spanish territory, based on the evidence that's seen from our court dossier, which we had shared with governments all over Europe. So first of all, it has not just symbolic and moral power, but practical legal power. These people know that they can be arrested. Any head of state, any head of church can be arrested for these crimes. Second thing it does is it shows people that they have the power to convene these, what are under international law called tribunals of conscience. We can form in our communities our own common law courts, our own means of going after the people who are harming our children or threatening our liberties if the courts and the governments and the police are colluding with those criminals, which they clearly are. So it shows people, it gives them a new weapon. And that's probably the long term most important things about it.
You still there, Kevin?
Yes, I am.
Oh, right. Yeah, it slightly dropped off there. You mentioned the common law court. Is that any different? We had John Darash of National Liberty Alliance, and obviously he's making progress with his courts. Is there a difference in your opinion between common law and natural law?
There's different interpretations about that, but our approach, our take on this is that common law is simply an expression of natural law. Natural law, it goes by different names, like the native people in Canada call it the law of the land. They have a similar term in Old England. Basically, it's the natural rights that we're born with, that nobody can alienate. Like the founding fathers of America said, these are unalienable liberties. It doesn't matter what governments bring in, what laws they bring in. You can't take away these rights from us. If you do, you're an unlawful power. And so really, natural law leads invariably to common law, which is recognizing that the people have the right to formulate and be the law because sovereignty arises from us. In a true constitution, it recognizes that power, sovereignty rests with the people. Even if you elect somebody, even if you have a government, you have to relinquish your sovereignty. You can withdraw your consent at any time, peacefully, lawfully, but you say, no, I will not cooperate with the law. It's not constitutional. It's violating my civil rights. So that's really what common law is. It's an expression of that natural law that binds all of us. It has universal jurisdiction. It's not dependent on whatever government you're living under, whatever statute there is. It's universal, and it predates all governments. That's the point. So I think we're really talking the same thing. And, we try to overcome these false divisions that are created among us because we have different interpretations. In America and England and Canada, we're in different situations, but it's really the same bedrock of the natural law we're talking about.
Right. Good. So what cases are you currently processing, and is there any new ones coming up soon, do you expect?
Well, we have a big focus now on training common law. We do a lot of work in training people in workshops, take action in their local. The two big issues we found all the time is the child trafficking and issues called corruption in the courts. We have a major case starting in Europe where we are convening with the help of people in Central and Eastern Europe. We're convening a major investigation into the role of the Vatican in committing genocide during the 1930s and 40s against the Jews, the Serbs, the Roma people. And there's a lot of evidence linking these concentration camps in Europe with the Vatican and the Ninth Circle. So in other words, there was satanic cults operating like the group that Pope Benedict was a part of, the SS Knights of Darkness, which was a satanic cult within the SS. This is the kind of case we're bringing in Europe. But again, we have other cases that people are established over a whole number of issues. And that's the thing. Any issue can be convened in it can be chemtrails, it can be, unfair local taxes by your county government. Anything that's violating liberties can be convened in the common law court.
I agree. So, how bad is this problem of the child abuse, sexual slavery and sacrifice? We've heard a lot about it over the last 12 months, 18 months maybe. is it really as deep as we suspect, or are we just dealing with a few individuals here?
No, it's like any institutionalized crime. It's even bigger and deeper than you can imagine.
Yeah.
Why else would it get away with? Why would so many people in such high positions get away with it all? Unless it had a lot of money and power behind it. And, that's the main point here. One of the main points is that it's really a big, huge child arms. Governments are involved, using child models, for example, and using children as shelter control agents. All of this is tied together. But again, it's got heavy involvement in it, organized crime, and a lot of money. A lot of corporations are involved in this. Banks like HSBC, JP Morgan, Bank of America. The same banks that are laundering drug cartel money are involved, for example, with Frank David here in provide a lot of children for these ninth circle rituals, for the human hunting partners, all these things that are going on as we speak. So again, it's a very big problem, but we've proven that despite all the power, they're very scared. They're cowards, and they do not like light shine on them. That's why we were able to stop 3 of the cults ceremonies on April 30th, because we took direct action to stop, go to the places that are happening, make the arrests, shut them down. So we can do this. Any of us can do this, and that's one of our chief problems.
Yes, it's a subject that people struggle with, mainly in the alternative media, and certainly the ones who are not awake struggle with it even more. They can't believe that so-called big names and famous names, or whatever you want to call it, popes and royal families are involved in it. And this is the biggest problem we face, is getting people to look at it. And over the last, certainly the last 6 months, there's been a lot of publicity on pedophiles with the Pedogate et al. Has this helped you and the ITCC in certain ways?
Well, in one sense, it has. But, on the internet, there's so much of the stuff now. It's really kind of voyeurism for people to go over the details over and over and over and never do anything about it. We say to people, information's not the end, it's just the beginning. You've got to act on it. And so in one sense, it puts the issue out there, maybe it legitimates it a bit more. But ultimately, we say to people, you've got to use the knowledge. You've got to protect children. When we made those raids in the 1930s, we saved the lives of 8 children. We freed them from these cages they were literally being held in. That's going on in every country in the world, in every major city, literally. Every big Catholic cathedral, we've documented that these things go on. So we have that obligation to stop it, not just talk about it.
Yeah, I did a news item. I think it was probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago, where it detailed how many. I think it was somewhere in the region of 400. It may have been 4,000 churches going bankrupt because of the fines imposed for their pedophilia, and so the churches were choosing to file for bankruptcy rather than pay the damages to the people that they've been interfering with. Are you aware of this?
Well, that's an old legal ploy. The churches they get their public relations department to circulate stories they're going bankrupt. I mean, if you can imagine the Vatican Bank going bankrupt, the Catholic Church, which brings in tens of billions of dollars every year, the Church of England, churches do not go bankrupt. They create an appearance in order to hide their assets. We found that when we first began to sue the churches in Canada. They all moved their headquarters. They hid their assets. They do all that to protect their money, which is their main concern. So I doubt very seriously whether any church has ever gone bankrupt over any of this. They're morally bankrupt, but they're certainly not financially bankrupt.
Yeah. Well, I think more and more people appear to be turning away from churches. Jesus never said you had to go to church. So, anyway.
Right.
So the ITCCS has now been going for 7 years, and do you feel that you're making progress? And if so, where? What has been the big change?
We are making great progress. We're not just in the examples I've given, but there's more people coming forward. Like especially when these takedowns happened on April 30th, when we actually stopped the Ninth Circle rituals. In about a 2-day period, we suddenly got about 50 emails from Holland alone of people wanting to volunteer. That was a huge increase. And now it's really, we're past the point of talking. Really the test is action now. And that's where we run up against people's kind of preconditioned mental slavery, where they don't think they have the power to do anything unless they get official permission. Or somebody says, yeah, this is legal, you can go ahead and do it. We have to realize that the law now in our society is working for the criminals. We have to reclaim that law. And that's really what we're doing. All of the times, and people should know this, all of the times, for example, that we have occupied churches, and the police show up, we just tell them. We educate the police. We get them on board. And they've never intervened. They've never tried to arrest us because they know it's true what we're saying. So we can get the authorities on our side if we educate them. We operate out of truth and not fear. It works. So that's, I'm amazed at how successful we've been. I think it shows if you're persistent and keep at something, you've got the truth on your side, you're very powerful.
Yes, I agree. A couple of questions from the audience. Some detractors of the ITCS court are saying that the court doesn't exist, as in a place or a building where people physically meet. Do you need to have a physical court, or could you hold court rulings through digital conference tools like National Liberty Alliance are doing?
Well, of course it was held in a building. We just didn't tell people where the building was for obvious security reasons. The 58 citizen jurors brought in the first verdict that made Ratzinger step down. They were linked by Skype. They were together in some countries. They were from 6 different nations, so obviously they could be in one place. The strange thing about these so-called detractors is that they don't seem to operate in the real world. They seem to think that you can tell the names of who the judges are, you can talk about the evidence, and nothing will happen to you. Like I said, we've had 6 Native members of ours killed because they went public prematurely with what they knew. You have to protect the witnesses, the children, the evidence. So naturally, we're not going to disclose a lot. But not disclosing is not the same thing as lying. It just means we're doing what any smart person would do when you're up against Goliath. You don't show all your cards. And, this is not a one-man operation, because if it was, I would have a hell of a lot of power for single-handedly forcing Pope Benedict to step down. I mean, we have to look through these lies that are generated to kind of distract people and get them to doubt, which is the main weapon of the adversary. It's to plant dissension, doubt, and to divide people so they can continue to do these crimes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We because of the levels of intel that's put out on our show these days, we get all kinds of threats, and I've had 2 death threats myself. And this is the way people sometimes don't understand. Or they say, well, just out the intel. Well, you're not the one with the bullet pointing at the back of your head, And it's important that you, particularly to do with the children, that you protect them.
Right.
So, one of the things that I covered recently on the show, and this is kind of ongoing and may be playing to some of the work that you're doing, is there's a lot of reports of First Nations families being murdered due to the positioning of their land in Canada and Alaska, for that matter, so they can facilitate pipelines, etc., mainly, not solely, but mainly for Chinese businesses. Do you know anything about this, and can you expand on it?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one of the campaigns we're doing in Canada on the West Coast. We have it very well documented, because I've been but there's a lot of stuff in the Canadian news. I'm not sure if this makes international media, but about all the missing women, Native women in British Columbia. And the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who in fact were involved in making those women go missing, they claimed it's only a few dozen. Well, we documented in our own research over 1,000, not just Native women, families that had been cleared out in the northern reaches of British Columbia. And that's happening for a simple reason, as it's always happened, to get the lands and the resources. These Native families are targeted by Chinese corporations, which are increasingly buying up a lot of the energy and the resources across Canada, and American cartels as well, working with the police and the people who traditionally made Native people go missing, which is the churches, Catholic Church especially. So, these things are happening as we speak, and it's there's a whole separate investigation going on for the missing people on the west coast of Canada. The Canadian government, like they did with the residential schools, are trying to cover it up with their own in-house inquiry that's shutting down evidence. But, we're doing a lot of work on that. And in fact, if people go to our Radio Free Canada website, that's bbsradio.com and then /Radio Free Canada, Kanata, you'll see in the back shows, the previous show, our archives, that we covered this issue a lot. We have some of the eyewitnesses who are documenting this. And it's part of this whole bigger geopolitics of Canada's resources being fought over by China, Russia, and the United States, and of course, traditionally England. And this is why Native people are still being targeted and killed so often.
Canada's not, this is something from my own observations. It's not it's got a lot of land, but it's not that well populated compared to other countries. Why do you think there's so much abuse and crimes of this nature going on in Canada? It appears to be going on a lot more per head of population than say, for argument's sake, the United States. I know Vancouver is basically the Hollywood of Canada, so there's a lot of incidents that go on in British Columbia. But is there a hidden agenda going on here, and why Canada?
Well, it's not so hidden once you start looking into it, but Canada has a very hidden image. It's got that nice guy image, deliberately cultivated to hide all these things. It's one of the biggest countries in the world with some of the richest resources. It's got a quarter of all the fresh water in the Western Hemisphere is right in Canada, with all the hydroelectric power, uranium, oil, minerals. Uranium and water alone are the two big, important resources in the coming century, and a lot of it's in Canada. Now, Native people sit on those resources, so they're prime targets. And because it's such a huge area, this is what I found in my research. When the Indian boarding schools were set up, they were deliberately set up by the government churches on these resources. And, on the west coast of Canada, if you take a boat 10 miles down the coast, you'll hear a different Native dialect. That's how diverse the cultures are, because it's so chopped up. You can hide a lot in those little coves and bays. You can do crimes and nobody ever knows about it. It's a perfect crime scene because there's a lot of wealth, a lot of people you can make go missing, and a lot of places to hide the bodies. And, the police in Canada are a joke. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have been an arm of this genocide for many, many decades. So, I remember a New York policeman used to joke about how the Americans would operate all the time in Canada without even the Canadians knowing about it, the FBI, the military. So, it's wide open for that kind of crime to go on and to be covered up.
Yes, it's sad. It really is sad. Was it St. Paul's that, I've been told it was St. Paul's that William Coombs died in? Is that correct?
St. Paul's Catholic Hospital in downtown Vancouver. It's run by the Archdiocese of the Catholic Church.
It was, funny enough, my partner actually was a nurse at the time, was looking after William Coombs about a month, I think it was a month, something like that, before he died. And it affected her quite a lot.
I'd certainly like to talk to her because, We need to compare notes about that. If you could give her my email.
Will do. Another question from one of the audience. I understand that ITCCS members or supporters must be protected, but why not release the names, photos and part of the recorded testimonies of the arrested satanic cult members? It seems now that some of the perpetrators were released and they are, remain protected, but the ITCCS direct action teams are now extra vulnerable. Is it not the case that those details should be released, or is it part of where it becomes uncomfortable to release?
Well, it's a very good question, and in fact, in the long run, they're right. The best protection, as I've found, is to have all the evidence out there.
Yeah.
But it gets complicated. All 19 of those people were released, as we knew they would be, because of the political pressure that came down and the church pressure to protect these Satanists. Now, the evidence, here's the thing. The police took evidence, but our teams took evidence as well. And it's presently not being released because the ITCCS is putting together a legal argument. And obviously, they're not going to release the evidence or the names or the locations or any of that prematurely, because then the other side would shut it down, bring in counter, stuff. And we don't want to tip our hand like that. We've made that mistake in the past. So it's all under lock and key right now. But of course, at one point, it's going to be released. It's like with our common law court cases. Some of the court records were released, others weren't. And the stuff that wasn't was related to ongoing investigations that we need quiet, because we're investigating people at the highest levels of power. So that's kind of the short answer. And also the fact that the primary purpose of what we're doing is not education. It's not to win some kind of propaganda high ground. It's to be effective, to stop these people. And you have to do that in a very secretive manner. You've got to use the rules of war, like Sun Tzu says in The Art of War, and be secretive and never let the other side know what you're doing, because we're a guerrilla army going up against a huge army. And so it's different than what we would like a lot of the time.
Yes, sometimes I don't think people, I get it myself, I should just out it, and, there's some certain intel I can't say. In fact, there's a lot of intel I can't say. It's all about protecting people within the team and any witnesses, and I think people perhaps forget, this is life and death for many of us who are in the front line, and I think it's the sheer depth that these people will go to shut down the likes of you and I, who are exposing them on a daily or weekly basis, and they should have a bigger understanding, I feel. But it's all about getting them to understand the depth of it. I think that's the biggest problem, is people just think, well, there's a lot of pedophiles, but they don't realise the spider's web is all links to higher and higher people. Is that what you found?
Definitely that, and also the fact that people have been brainwashed into a system, and a lot of this is a struggle for freeing people's minds. They don't realize that we're at war, that there's a war being conducted against us every moment of our lives, against our air, our water, our children, our rights. We don't see most of it, and therefore we don't think it's there. But when you do, I often say to people, I had to face this personally before I woke up to it, and I think it's true about all of us. I had to lose my job, my livelihood, my family, my children, and be continually attacked for me to wake up to what we were facing. So I don't blame people for their ignorance, but once you have this knowledge, you have no excuse anymore. You don't have the excuse of ignorance. We are at war. We have to operate under those conditions of war, not conditions of peacetime.
Yes, ignorance is a choice, and I do understand. We did a recent show by one of the Illuminati programmers, and it was very heavy and involved children and what they do to children if they're born in the Illuminati family or they're sequestered into the Illuminati family. And it was quite horrific. The length they will go to train people, for want of a better word, into controlling the rest of us. And one of the things that I mentioned that came out of the show is people are now aware of it, which is the first stage. But if we're going to end this, we can't sort of be visiting it every show day. It has to be something that is in people's minds on a daily basis. You have to show the same tenacity and commitment to end this system as they do.
Exactly.
To enforce it on us.
That's exactly right. Couldn't say it better.
The fact that the police, in certain cases, are not indicting these criminals show that we still have a problem with the local police, and national for that matter. But should it not be a case that these criminals could be detained in an independent prison outside the official system? And has the ITCC considered this?
Definitely, we've considered it. And our first approach is to get the police who are there on board. Because don't forget, we're operating within the law. We're not some kind of, vigilante force. The jails should be at the service of the people to confine those who are threatening them, who have harmed them, who are threatening their children. The citizen arrest laws of most countries allow us to do that. So those are our facilities, just like the churches are taxpayer supported. Those are open public spaces that do not belong to the churches. It's the same with the jails, the courthouses, everything. So we have to reclaim this. We don't need to set up our own private prisons. That we have to reclaim what exists. And we find when we operate that way, we get new power, and the police come forward. We have those police are husbands and wives. They've got children of their own. We need to get them on board and hand over the keys to the jails. That's our whole strategy, rather than a defensive one. We just kind of operate in the dark and do your own thing. So that's kind of our general strategy.
Yeah, I think the police are in a very poor position. Not only in these cases, but in general, because they're the first line. And I made an appeal and asked a former police officer who had appeared on CBS to come on, and he was warning of the dangers that cops face, because more and more people are finding out more and more, not just about this, but about the crime and the fraud and the corruption and all these names are involved in the rituals, etc. And the police, when the public get angry, are the first in line. And it's been documented a number of crimes that the police have committed, violence to motorists, etc., etc. And one of the things that I came up is to shame them in the communities. You don't have to fight violence with violence. If
right.
You know a cop in your community, you get a group of people to stand outside his door and shame him out of the community into doing something for the benefit of the people. That's what
right.
allegedly he's supposed to be there for. We all know he's not protecting. They're not protecting the people anymore. They're protecting the state and the system. And this is the biggest problem I see. And police officers going forward are going to face a big problem unless they start acting for and on behalf of the people.
Well, that's exactly right. And not only shame them, but we invite police to our training workshops. We give them information about the common law, because don't forget, cops are never trained in the common law. They're trained in statute law. They're trained to be statute enforcers and revenue collectors. And, they need to learn that. And in a place like America, they've got a great advantage because sheriffs are elected by the community. They're not answerable to the government. It's from the old English shire system where in a shire community in Old England, you would have a sheriff adopted by the people to convene courts to maintain the peace in the community. They have that power in America. That's a tradition you should revive in England because it came from there originally. And those are the people who can be the arm of our work.
Yes, I agree. Where are we for time? I know you've got another interview this evening. So, to get people to move forward, a lot of people are concerned that they're not legally entitled to carry out this type of work. Is there something you can say to address that?
Yes, they have every right. Legality is something that's born into us. It's a basic tenet of common law that if you are harming nobody, if you're causing harm to no one, you can't be arrested because you're doing nothing wrong. As long as you're not harming anyone or yourself, you can perform any act, and especially if it's to defend your liberties, your children, whatever. So we have to overcome that mental fear, and the only way you do that is through practice, by showing that's true. And we had to learn that through practice. We didn't learn it in a room somewhere. We did it by standing up to the system. Even if people can't do that, we got to start teaching them that they can. So that's part of our work, that education.
Yes. So how can it all be sped up? Does it require more people, more funds, or just a change of the way people respond to this information?
I think the first thing it requires is courage. Very simple human quality of courage. And once we're armed with that, many things happen. I've seen one or two people cause incredible change simply by being tenacious and courageous and standing up for other people who can't for themselves. And it doesn't require great numbers. In our books, you mentioned them. If you go to Amazon.com and put my name in, Kevin Annett, you'll see all of our books. One of them is the Common Law Training Manual, which I really urge people to get. It's only $10. I think like £7 or £8 in England. And in it, you reprint the Art of War by Sun Tzu. People should read those lessons, take them to heart about how to operate. It doesn't take a lot of people. It takes persistence and acting in a strategic, focused way. And there's a lot of things we've learned about how to do that, and we can share that maybe on future shows and in workshops and that. We do online workshops and other things. So we'd be happy to share more of that with you and your listeners.
So that book is called Establishing the Reign of National Liberty, a Common Law Training Manual by Kevin Annett.
You can get it at Amazon. Yeah.
Now, this will probably be the final question. But fear, as you just mentioned, is the people's biggest problem when they're taking on any authority, be it police, judges, even mortgage foreclosures. They always feel disempowered. It's important that everyone empowers themselves, and this is how we bring it down. It doesn't, you mentioned Sun Tzu, but Gandhi basically shut down the whole of India to the British and the Dutch by non-violent non-compliance. And so everyone just decided, we're not playing your game. Now, probably is going to be the final question now. Isn't it always the case with this type of work that it actually comes down to enforcement, and is there something in the works that can basically push this forward by enforcing it?
Well, exactly. We have common law arrest warrants, which have power. They have the full force of the law. We have police willing to enforce these warrants. They're lawful warrants, and so armed with them, people can use them to arrest known child rapists and others. I don't think most people are going to get on board with this. We are aimed at the minority who do have the courage to take action, and that's who we aim at, because the majority of people, unfortunately, are followers. They're going to follow our example. So we're aiming at the people, the minority, who are willing to be the tip of the spear on this. And so those are the ones we're appealing to on that.
Right, we're probably at the end of the hour. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to give out your website and books or radio shows before we go?
Yeah, every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, I believe that's 11 p.m. Greenwich time, bpsradio.com/Radio Canada, every Sunday. Our websites are itccs.org, murderbydecree.com, and you can write to me, the common land at gmail.com, and I'd be happy to, I get back to people right away when they're right. hiddenfromhistory1 at gmail.com is another email for me. And I just want to thank you for this opportunity, Thomas, and I hope you'll send me your email and we can be in touch about other issues and other interviews.
Yes, that's in the process as soon as the show finishes. I'll trade emails, and we'll also mention something to do with William Coombs.
Okay.
Final thing to say, Kevin?
No, just appreciate it, and don't forget, anyone listening, you are the change. You are the common law revolution, and it first starts in your own mind, reclaiming your natural authority and not being afraid. There's a lot of us out here, we just have to link up. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Kevin.
Okay.
That's been a THI special with Kevin Annett of the ITCCS, and we wish him all the best with that and thank him for coming on. We can't carry on with this nonsense. It's a crime to ignore it. Ignorance is a choice, as Kevin said earlier, and we have to look at it and face it head on. Only then can you end this abomination of what's going on with the children, not only in Canada, but all around the world. They seem to think, these elites, that the children are there for their benefit. No, they're not. And we shouldn't sit back and allow it either. Right. Thanks for that, Kevin. And we're going to have a music break, and then we're going to have a chat between Holly and I in the second hour. So thanks to Kevin, and we'll be back shortly.
We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Bye, Kevin. Hi all, and welcome back to the second portion of the show. And we're going to bring Holly Peterson on shortly for a chat. We expected Kevin to be on for an hour and a half, but he's busy, as you can tell, bringing royal families down and popes and all kinds of fun and games in Brussels and Canada and elsewhere. So he had another interview. Initially we were going to bring him on tomorrow, but there's a few things I need to cover tomorrow, which would have impacted on the questions, which are mounting up again. So we decided to do tonight's show and the normal show tomorrow. Hi, Holly.
Hi, Tommy.
So, what did you make of that show?
It was so wonderful to hear Kevin, and wow, there was a lot of information there that I hadn't heard. So it's good to know the kind of progress that's being made. Plus the fact that it didn't go unnoticed by quite a few members that we were getting major audio problems. Plus the fact that
yes, it started off that way because we missed Kevin for the first 5-10 seconds because they turned off the Skype sound to Kevin. So once I adjusted it back, thankfully it came back on, but then the interference continued. At key points as well, sadly, and this is the depths that these clowns and people will go to disrupt anyone here. And from my point of view, I think it's funny that they lead such sad lives, that they've got to spend their time listening to my show and others and disrupting it. And to me, it's also a big sign of their desperation.
Yeah, Michael Joquin also said it's working, obviously. So that's a good point.
Yeah. So, how's things with you, Holly?
Things are really good. I just walked through a major shadow side this week. It can always be kind of scary when you do that, but it was a lesson that was not unfamiliar to me, but had a different shape this time. I needed to get in touch with my leadership role. And I went through this like 10 years ago, and that was more in stepping up to being a leader around other people. This time, what happened was I really was buying into the whole lack of money and being the age that I am, which is older than 60, and having a hard time finding a job and blah, blah, blah. And I was really beating myself up and putting myself in a tough position. And I've built in enough help through the work that I've done up till now that I realized I needed to change my thinking and I needed to do some different things. So I reached out to use some of those tools. And one of the things that I did was I started listening to Teal Swan again, which I hadn't done for a while. And I don't know how many people really are out there that are not saying similar things, but I needed to hear her voice, say it her way, because that's what it took to get through to me. And it made a huge difference. It was like this jolt of, I knew that, but I knew it intellectually, and it sunk down 6 inches into my heart and made all the difference. And now I am on the other side of that shadow and ready to take my life back. I am taking my life back.
That's good. Holly, can you mute the show you're listening to? Because it's feeding back through the mic.
How do I do that? How's that?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay.
Yeah, this goes into...
How's that?
Yep, that's fine. This goes into why we started talking about dealing with the shadow side, and doing your inner work, because it's times like these. It was basically for people to be ready for these times, because I've termed it the truth trauma, and people are kind of struggling with the avalanche of information that's coming from all angles, which was kind of forecast with the golf ball analogy, as if people remember it. And you have to stay centered and balanced. And the shows recently have been fairly heavy. I do appreciate that, but it needed to be said at that time. It's all about the timing. So how have you been able to cope with the levels of the extra information and also the volume?
Yeah, I got a strong hit on that. Am I still echoing?
Yeah. Yes.
I got
you may have to turn the show you were listening to off, Holly.
A strong hit on that. Am I?
That's better.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay, so I think it was after the first Illuminati show. And I can't say there was a lot of information that I didn't know, but it still hit me. And the reason it did was because I was too heavily balanced in the negative that day and for a day before that. And I realized that I needed to back off and get some balance.
Yep.
Yep.
This is how you've covered your stuff in your books, and you help people with certain situations privately, and it's so easy, it doesn't matter who you are, to go slightly off track, which then escalates and starts running away with you before you realise how far you've gone down the track. And the further it goes down, the harder the pull back up. Is that something you would agree with?
Absolutely, yes. And it's different for everybody, but I just realized that, okay, I need to back off from this page for a day. Not that I'm not still doing admin stuff, but I don't need to be on there as heavily. And go hug a tree, seriously, or Chloe will like that. Or go do something out in nature, like James talks about, or whatever I need. Listen to music. My dad's been listening to music almost every day, and I took an afternoon and was listening to music with him. That's the kind of thing that I have to do to balance it out.
Yes. The people messaging on me, we know. But so the Humanity Unplugged shows had a big effect on some people, and obviously the Farley shows, which was the Illuminati 1 and 2, and the training and the depth of the abuse that the children suffer. Did that affect you particularly hard?
Well, it's never easy to listen to that, and to, if you have any empathy at all, you're going to feel a lot of emotions come up. But having been an addictions counselor for a lot of years and a life coach, one of the things that I have built in is to surround myself with kind of a bubble. A mentor of mine told me this years ago when I was getting ready to go to school. She said, surround yourself with this bubble, because she said you're not going to be able to take on everything that everybody's putting out there. You've got to protect yourself. And that's a tool that I use on a regular basis. I have to. If I allowed myself to react to everything that I pick up from people, I'd be a mess, as you well know, being an empath.
Where do you think, how far do you think we've come? Of course, it's just over a year now we've been doing these shows. Do you think there's been a good progression with the show? On the page?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I mean, look at where we were in Cosmic Voice, and we saw that it was the path was splitting. Not that that's good, bad, right, or wrong, but our path, it was time for us to go a different way. And what we did by creating THI was we gave a place for people, not only for refuge, but to empower one another, to connect with one another in this cyber world. And I do know people have connected personally. I know you have, and some of the members have been able to meet each other. That's so exciting. We've come so far, let alone what's been going on through your contacts and the people that you work with out there in the world in 10 years. Incredible.
Yes, of course, it wasn't the best of starts for the group, was it? You're coming up to, I think it's the name of your book, Chaos. Yeah.
Unplugged from chaos.
You know, we started off with chaos, and I was pleased how quickly the waters were smoothed. And
it was like people were really looking for that place. I think we saw it in Cosmic Voice that people were really looking for that, and so it worked out well that we could create that place in THI. And I just have to say that whatever happened with Cosmic Voice, I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Drake. I just need to say that.
Yes, I agree. I've cancelled the chat, so. Yeah, it was, as I say, it was unfortunate with Keenan, but then the lead into it with the faction show kind of exposed certain people more than people realised at the time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the fun and games went on, and then part of the problem with Cosmic Voice is the people were getting confused by the different opinions between Drake and I, particularly over Trump and a few others, you know, and it's not mine. You know, it just was becoming fractious, where people are saying, well, Drake's saying this about Trump and you're saying this, and you know, then there was the issue of the refugees, etc. And in the end, of course, they made the decision for us, and out we went. And then we launched into THI and hit the ground running, and quite honest, I can't believe it's a year.
I know, it went by so fast. But sometimes I think it just takes what it takes. And it's always good to have, even if it's just a small core of people that kind of move together and have the same goal. And that's what we did. We just took that small core, and the rest of the people that were there on the fringe were kind of, I think maybe just waiting for that to happen, and then it just gelled together.
It's not Kevin. So, yeah, I agree. That's so where do you expect things to go this year, Holly?
Oh boy. I don't know where I expect it to go, but my intention and my energy is going to freedom and empowerment of each other. And I'm doing that on a local level as well as through THI and now MeWe. Having walked through this last shadow side, I will be stepping out more. Spark was just talking about this on MeWe and how, you know, she doesn't have any fear anymore and is just going for it. And that's where I'm at. I just looked at things and said, what have I got to lose? Not much. So it's time for me to step into my authentic self. Who am I really? Break away from this. As you say at the end of every show, we're not here to conform to anybody else's idea of what we're supposed to be.
No.
And I'm breaking away from that. So that's part of my expectation is, for me, is to truly step into my authenticity, be the powerful being that I am meant to be, and I know I will bring some people along with me. No doubt. I hope it's a lot.
Yeah. So it's
How about you?
Me?
What's your?
My own personal opinions is over the 12 months, I've seen how the show has morphed into the way I was hoping it was going to go, where it was, we all ask for full disclosure and we want it now and all of it, but my own personal opinion, whilst I want full disclosure on the ET narrative, because it will change a lot of things that are the stumbling blocks to our species advancing forward. It also has to be done in a way where people are able to grasp it, and that can't be done in one download, because this spider's web encompasses everything to do with our life, be it business, government, religion, you could go education, energy. These clowns are doing everything to stop us moving forward as a race and or a species. And so that's kind of the way I've carried the show, where certain things have been introduced and then step back and then wait for the members to, we want to know more about this. The example was the two worlds. I think more and more people are now seeing what I was trying to say back in November. I hinted at it in October, but the two worlds now has become surreal in many aspects of how people go about their lives. Nothing seems to phase anymore. There's big news stories and people just brush it off because it's a case of, we've seen all this before. Manchester being another incident this week. We've seen all this before, and it almost becomes like a sideshow. And the intel that has been coming into this show has been different to most, and has largely been validated. There's one or two things that haven't been validated, like the death of Soros. But then, where has Soros been in the news? Has he been seen? No, he hasn't. Why is the Black Lives Matter suddenly not important anymore? Of course, Mr. Soros was funding that. And so there's certain hints, and obviously now people have seen that Hillary Clinton is not the original, whether she's dead, clone, synthetic, or whatever, or a double. It's not the original, and we wait for a full confirmation. To me, it's already confirmed, but other people want certain validations, and this is kind of where we're going, and people would be better validating themselves. And this is what the show's all about. It's not about me, it's about everybody. We don't need one Neo, we need millions of Neos. And I'm kind of pleased the way the members have all rallied together. Yourself and James set it out to be a caring, sharing group, and with everyone given the chance to step forward. Nobody's more important than anybody else, and people can feel safe and can come forward with their stories, and some of them being fairly horrific. That's help people.
It's pretty amazing too that, we have over 2,000 members now, and I remember when the numbers were going up significantly in Cosmic Voice, and we were getting all kinds of trolls and chills and crazy making stuff, and we've had very little of that. So a lot of that has to do with, and I'm going to take a little credit and give a little credit to James, because he and I have learned a lot about dealing with shoals and trolls and having to put up with that stuff. And I think the backing that we've gotten from you, Tommy, and always having our back and helping us figure out, okay, how do we deal with this situation, and try to still be open to the members so that we're not cutting anybody off and we're not censoring and all that kind of stuff. It's been quite a learning experience, but it's been great. And the main reason is because of our members. They're just awesome people.
Yes. Well, this is kind of, people don't like Facebook, and I get loads of emails into the Truth, Honor, and Integrity email saying, I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know what's going on. Can you do a blog, etc., etc. So, we've created the with Michael Jacquin to the MeWe page, which is similar to Facebook, but it's just without the ads and data issues and privacy issues, and it's also a place where people don't have to connect with their family, because a lot of people are struggling with families who are not awake, and quite frankly think we're all nuts. When we actually think they're the nutty ones, because once they start looking at it properly with an open mind, it's all in front of your face. But
sure
what
is.
People see, you can look, but people don't see.
Yeah.
And this is so if people who listen to this show don't like Facebook, come and join us on the MeWe. Send us your email address to the Truth, Honor, and Integrity email, and then we'll add you to MeWe. So there's no real need now to join Facebook if that's not what you want to do.
Exactly. MeWe's good. I like that over there. It's popular.
What have you made of course, the hottest topic in the alternative media is the Corey Good stuff.
I knew that was coming. Oh, heavens. It's just really interesting how, I think that's one of the reasons why the last year went by so fast, was all the fallout from all the alternative media. And, we just watched so many that were compromised, or that we found out later were either a part of the cabal or they were working for them, either knowingly or non-knowingly. It's just been incredible to watch it all unfold. And I had concerns about you, of course, but you've hung in there, and despite a couple of death threats, you're still going. It's just craziness. But like you said, it goes back to the two worlds, and it makes it pretty obvious at this point that the separation is just getting wider and deeper.
Yep. To the people who have been messaging me and asking me, no, I'm not on the third episode of Randy's Corey Good exposure. People kept asking me. I'm not the third interview. I said me say, going back in May of 2015 on Corey Good, I could only go so far, given it wasn't my show, and Drake has an affinity with Mr. Wilcock, which I didn't agree with at the time, but that's Drake's choice.
Right.
Hopefully Corey realises where he's going, and that's why I did that piece of reaching out to him. He's backed himself into a very poor corner, and there's very powerful people inducing him into a path which I'm not too sure he's equipped to go down.
Right.
And I hope he steps out. One of the saddest things to me over the last 12, 18 months is how many in the alternative media are corrupt. It was, naively thought that this was our domain, the people who want the truth and people who want to see a better world and do things a better way. And to find the volume of people who have been exposed or dropped off is a great disappointment to me, because I thought we had something that we could really move forward with. But like everything else, the cabal, they're tenacious and they leave no stone unturned.
Mm-hmm.
And I was aware that there was one or two. I didn't realise how many there was. And that is the saddest thing to me.
Right. And on a positive side, it's really helped us, the members, I think, to hone our discernment, because how many of us were taken in by some of these?
All of us.
I surely was.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I was taken in by Keenan for 6 months. I waited probably near 20 months before I could, in fact it was longer than that. It's 2.5 years before I could out Keenan, because I would have got swamped, and I had to be fair to Drake, because it was his show. But Keenan didn't add up to me, and eventually when he read the Asian faction script out, I knew I had to step in and step out, because I couldn't bear for members to listen to that rubbish anymore. It's sad, We did try to help him. I sent people to help him to step out. Maybe he wasn't aware of who he was working for, and he issued both of us death threats.
Yeah.
So.
I have some personal disgust with the man for personal reasons. I won't go into, but glad that's all over with.
Right, we're gonna. You can stay on, Holly. We're gonna add Chloe into it, because Chloe wants to talk a bit about William Coombs that was mentioned earlier, and also about the children and Lucifer. So we're going to add Chloe to the call, and feel free to chime in.
Cool. Good.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Chloe.
Hello, let me turn off the show.
Cool. Okay.
There you go.
So, Kevin mentioned, of course, it came up about William Coombs, and I'd already remembered you mentioning William Coombs and who he was, and you looked after him for a while.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what went on there, and what was he like?
Oh, he was a sweetheart. Very weak, very low self-worth. I should give some background, though, because it was really odd. It was about the last year of my working at St. Paul's, because it was about January 2011. And it was the second time that I had ever been called into a shift by the unit coordinator, and called in specifically not staffing constant care with a patient. And that the same shift that I was injured on also happened to be that exact circumstances I was called by the unit coordinator because, I guess I had some good skills at taking care of people that were tricky. And I often found when I showed up to these shifts that the person wasn't tricky to take care of at all. You just had to treat them like a normal human. It's a matter of perspective, right? So he was quite a small statured man, very soft spoken, and so much sadness and yet, life and laughter in his eyes. It was quite, from the moment that I met him, it was really obvious he'd been through a lot, and I wasn't told a whole lot of history. I was informed by the unit coordinator that there was a court case pending with him, and that I was informed that his name on the chart wasn't his real name. It was Ernie Coombs on the chart. And I remember in particular this one moment, he didn't really have a set diagnosis. He was in for blood tests for some sort of systemic infection, which is a hallmark of what they called nosocomial hospital bugs. Basically, all the lymphs and the immune system shuts down due to exposure to the superbugs that develop and proliferate in hospitals. I'm not sure what happened to him a month later, but he sure wasn't about to die when I was taking care of him. But I do remember this one night, he was nauseated, and I got him up to go to the bathroom, and he called for me, and I knocked on the door. I'm like, "Do you want me to come in?" And he said yes. And I came in and I helped him up, and he was just shaking and almost in tears, and he just felt so weak. He said, "I feel I'm just an animal. I'm just an animal." And it wasn't the first time that he'd called himself that. And I just held him up and wiped his face with a cool cloth, and I said to him, I crouched down because he was so much smaller than me. I said, "No, we're the animals, Ernie. Us white people are the animals. We're the savages. You're not." And he looked up at me, and this little smile came up on his face, and that laughter is a layer in his eyes came up. Started laughing. He was a really beautiful soul. And I always did. We rarely, I took care of him for 4 shifts, 4 12-hour shifts. We rarely hear what happens to people later. But when I did hear of his death, and I had thought that he was actually bounced back and forth between St. Paul's Hospital and VGH, Vancouver General Hospital. And I know that when a patient gets bounced between those 2 big hospitals in Vancouver, that a lot of things can happen that aren't really recorded, charted. There's a lack of continuity in care, to say the least. And it's not the first time that I've heard something sort of out of the blue happen after a person's been moved from one of the major hospitals to another. They're like less than 3 miles apart. I'm not sure why they would have moved him to VGH. I know they did at one point. And you'll recall VGH is the hospital where I was riding my bike by, and I looked at a statue that's underneath the emergency entrance. That's the same statue that I got zapped by, and then all of a sudden I had that guy in a car trying to run me down. So there's a lot of dark magic in that beautiful city. So yeah, it's quite heartbreaking to think about. But the one thing that I do keep in mind is that I did meet his partner once, May, and I know that those 2 were soulmates, and that there was, they are together outside of here, you know, and those children that were taken and horrifically abused for a long time before they were released, they are released now. You know, they're no longer being held in the soul traps or any sort of after physical life trap. I don't know how much you want to talk about what you know, Thomas, but the whole, St. Paul's was a Catholic church in origin, and in complete origin, you know, the good Templars did begin the hospitals, the hospitaliers, right?
Yeah, St. John.
Yeah, but yeah, so there's a long history of distortion and overlays of retelling of history due to our, you know, almost cognitive wipes that seem to happen in our own walling off of traumas and shadow aspects that we don't, you know, unlooked at parts of ourselves. So it's hard to, you know, at one moment we'll look into these things and kind of put the pieces together and then we wake up the next morning and we go have to deal with life and we sort of forget about it all. But when you have these moments where you meet people like Ernie Coombs and see, you know, you don't forget it. You don't forget it. And he's not the only Native person that I've met and that has had very low self-worth, yet the strength of spirit that is the likes of which that most of us don't dream of having. You know, they like stay eternal children in terms of their joy de vivre, you know. They understand more innately about how nature and their role in nature, even if they didn't grow up in the clan situation, you know, they're the people that taught me to look at the sky and know it's a storm coming, you know. But to get back to the darker aspect of it, there's, so, like, it may have started as a Catholic church, but it was completely exploited in terms of that good intent, you know, the inversion of everything. The whole top floor of St. Paul's Hospital is possibly the most haunted, abandoned now unit. Used to be the psychiatric unit. You know, and they openly experimented on all sorts of people, not just Native people up there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chloe, one of the members is asking if you would explain more about what happened with the statue.
Oh God. It looks like a 60s style effigy of sort of like a family grouping, but it basically had some sort of a mini egregore attached to it. An egregore is it's a magical term to describe a physical object that has had a malicious intent imbued into it. Sometimes I have seen them as literally, you know, piles of souls, piles of body. And it's everybody that's kind of consented to negative ideations or surrendered into a horrific trauma wholeheartedly. They have their life force energy, their attention energy attached to an object. And it basically, as soon as I looked at it, it was like a whack to my third eye. And it felt like a very strong electrical jolt. So there may have been some technology behind that. And within half a block, riding on my bike, I had a guy yelling at me, and I pulled up onto the sidewalk because, it was a 2-lane road to get out of his way, and he kept yelling at me. And I basically, Tommy, did I have about another 10, 12 blocks to my house?
Yep.
Yeah. So I rode like the wind with a little bit of help. And this car followed me down alleys, trying to turn. I purposefully went up a one-way street. He still showed up. But I managed to get all the way home without him actually seeing where I lived, because I literally had the wind at my back. But yeah, that time was very, very, that was the year after my injury, which was, again, the second shift that I was called for specifically at St. Paul's to come work. And so, we all have our challenges. What I can look now and say was a challenge to wake me up and to fight for my right to be let be and to reclaim my personal power and self-worth. And Thomas has been a witness definitely to that, just as much as I've been a witness to him. Holly, I know you helped and I helped talk him into doing these radio shows in some ways, right?
Exactly.
He didn't think he could do it, you guys.
Him for some time.
That's right. So he didn't think he could do it either. So we all have, we do say that, look within, but definitely you can.
Yep.
To be able to share and stuff.
One of the things you touched on before.
So the other thing I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I just need to complete that and add something to what you said before. The statue issue is an ongoing problem that most people will not be aware of. It's almost like they give certain objects a life force in certain situations.
Hours.
Be it obelisks, be it the Shiva in the front of CERN in Switzerland, the cats, particularly the black cats, the panthers or the jaguars, in front of the financial districts and certain temple entrances. They have a life force connected to them, and this is a science that most people are completely unaware of and can be targeted by them. This is why they put them there. And so anyone who has certain intentions will get hit energetically.
Not intention so much as your energy is attractive to, they want to snare you into lower energies. My energy was high, and they wanted to knock it down. They wanted to attach it to the egregore. What an intention is in invocation, prayer, is in ceremonial magic, white or black, is a prayer, right? So they'll all sit in a circle and set a prayer or thought form intention to put, to attach people's energies. Nothing is powered in here without us. That's why the most powerful thing Shane ever, I knew it before, but he put it in a sentence. Know where your energy goes. Protect it. Guard it. Create your own by owning your own energy and not letting it get snagged. So I basically blipped that machine / egregore magic object by looking at it, giving it my attention energy. I looked at it, right? That blipped it, and it bang, whacks me, and then it triggers the nearest synthetic, excuse my language, asshole in a car.
See, I'm not understanding this.
Who was that?
No, it's okay. Carry on.
Yeah, so that's how it works. I gave it my attention by looking at it. It got attracted to my energy. I also had, other things going on at the time, but the other take home to that is, they are an ongoing issue. Everything's an ongoing issue that is distracting us from staying in center and being balanced. That time of year when I was with Ernie, that time of year is always challenging for a lot of people. It's the winter solstice, every solstice, they do stuff. May, I mean, look at, they do stuff. This is part of their rituals that's been recorded into this replay of loops, and it worked in the original, and we still suffer through the echoes of it because we are human and we feel for each other, but what I wanted to talk about with the statue, because it was a family, there's also a layer of inversion to this, and that connects to the inversion of the original intentions of the people that started hospitals. These Catholic, the true, like before it was Catholicism, it was teaching meditation, teaching the right way to eat, teaching the right way to breathe, teaching the right way to treat each other. These are the original, I don't want to say ascended masters, but the original creator being teachers that came into here to remind us of the path that we ought to be on, but we had to hear them out and choose it for ourselves. And meditation does very much teach you, and shielding and doing your shadow work within your shield does teach you about where you send your energy, because you'll find out, if you're not happy and you're imbalanced and leaning towards the negative, you're going to be paranoid and kind of attracting the negative to you, and also conversely for very up, people will, I've had people tell me, we've had people attack us because of our high energy, because they want to drag us down. It's both ends, and you really, actually, Og mentioned this, you need to be neutral, poker face, because the AI can't get a read on you. The ones that want drama can't get a foothold. But it's hard. Pardon?
Can't lose.
Yeah. They can't lose you, but you got a poker face, right? And it's hard for people like me, because I'm very passionate and I wear my emotions on my face, right? So this inversion thing, what I wanted to say about the family statue, the human family being used in this way, it's like the opposite, and Ernie's whole energy, like he would, I just knew, taking care of him, that he would rather just, be playing and drinking and playing the drums, not in a hospital. Anyways, so the whole Catholic thing, what was the date around? What year was that, Tommy? Lucifer was freed. We did out this on the show. And I did actually, even Tanat said it, what was it, 2013? She talked about Lucifer a bit, that he was one of the original creator beings.
14.
And that 2014, and she had said that that he'd gotten badly infected with the fractal virus and had done some bad stuff. And that's what the fractal behavioral virus does, is it accentuates basically all of our worst and best traits. And the society brings out more leaning towards the worst traits, of course, the 7 vices, 7 sins. But so Lucifer was held captive in one of those cubes. It's like a soul cage that basically inverts the being's energy that's within it and weakens them, obviously. I mean, they're a really strong being. I have no idea how they would go about trapping such a being. All I can think about it was probably some sort of a hostage situation. Because Lucifer was actually the protector of children. Now, think about the inversion that I keep bringing up. The Vatican had him in an inverting of energies, of soul energies cage. What would that allow them to do?
Good.
Hurt children. Yeah. Yeah, so, can you hear me, Tommy?
Yes.
Yeah, so they used Lucifer's energies to both give them a carte blanche with children and in a way to bind them, because he was the guardian of children. In essence, all children were hers, right? Creator being, male and female. Then, so that's how this whole thing started, with them thinking they could do anything with kids, and it links to, again, the family statue, the biggest way that they obviously, destroyed the native wisdoms, the native myths, the native teachings, was to take these children from their families, from their traditions, from their clans, from their grandmothers and their grandfathers and their mothers and fathers. So this goes back to the destruction of our families and the various methods that were employed over the 13,000 years to corrode our ability to, speak around the campfire with each other and figure stuff out. There's nothing better than, a grandparent that really knows you and won't let it go if there's something bothering you, to help you through it. And when you take that away, it's really hard. It's really hard. THI family, and even too with moments with strangers, we can connect when there's an opportunity, when someone asks you something directly, or something just happens, out in the movie that brings up something to talk about and something to connect about, It can make us laugh. It can make us open and heal.
Yes. We're going to bring Holly back in for a final say. Because, I don't want to go 3 hours tonight. I've got another 3 hours tomorrow, and it's been a long day.
Yep.
Anything you'd like to say before we wrap things up, Holly?
Oh, thanks. I just want to let members know that you guys are doing all the right things, and you're reaching out to each other, and you're supporting one another and encouraging one another. And don't feel alone. Don't hesitate to reach out when you are walking through a shadow side. And I know a lot of you have done that. We need each other. It's a good thing. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask for support. You've seen other people do it on the page. It does work. Thanks for all your support, you guys. You're doing great.
And thank you as well, Holly, for all your help with the page and various other things. Chloe, final say?
Yeah. Let's have a lay down on the couch.
Right.
Nice to talk to you, Holly.
You too, Chloe.
Guys. Thank you. Big hug.
You too, hon.
Right. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. The Kevin information is like a continuation in some aspects of this Farley material. It keeps it in people's minds more than perhaps some would like. I understand that, but we can't betray what has taken place on this planet and what's happening with the children. It's beyond words at times. You know, the depth of it is frightening. You know, we came up with some figures recently, and 18,000 Syrian children have had their organs harvested. There's 500,000 American children going missing every year, permanently. You know, that's just 2 countries. All to keep these elites and their perversity in order. Well, it's time we fought back. All of us. Many in this group are. You know, and we thank Kevin for coming on and giving his time. And thanks to Holly and giving her time. And thanks to Chloe as well for giving us an insight onto William Coombs, who was mentioned in the first hour with Kevin Annett, who was outing what took place in 1964. He was a witness to it, and suddenly was killed. And this is the way these clowns act. But it's not all bad news. There's lots of positive things that are going on, and sometimes we tend to forget that because there's so much noise at the moment. And it's important that people do what I do. I step out of the noise. I try to avoid confrontation because it serves no purpose whatsoever. There's a lot of information flying around. Learn to pick up what you need. Don't immerse yourself in all of it. You'll get lost. And that's exactly what they're trying to do, is have you immersed and lost inside the matrix. The ones with the overview who pick and choose what they need to listen to can see everything. And that's where wisdom comes in. That's where you can see further forward. You can't see further forward immersed in the noise and inside the matrix. Step out and overview it. We'll be back tomorrow with the normal show, and that'll be 7:30. Thanks to Victoria Plaistow, thanks to Holly, thanks to Chloe, and special thanks to Kevin Annett for coming on tonight and giving us his time. And just needs to be said, if you lead life in love and care, you will prevail. If you lead life in fear and anger, you will fail. Feel free for you to be the person you wish to be, not the person who conforms to what others want them to be. You are a multi-dimensional being, operating simultaneously on many levels. You are not here to conform, you are not here to be stifled, and you're certainly not here to be enslaved or abused. You mustn't compete with your friends, family or neighbours. Very important. We're not here to compete with each other, that just helps them. You are here to be the best you can be, and do so as a crown of creation. Now go out with the confidence of who and what you are and excel in yourself, and in doing so, inspire others. This has been a THI special with Kevin Annett. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name's Thomas Williams, and we'll be back tomorrow. Bye for now.